hello there. You know, the one thing that really surprised me about the last video on the demon is that it shocked people that I engaged that entity for over an hour and 40. Why did you do that? I have been basically all my life one that never shrinks away from debate, especially when they're on topics that I know a lot about. I don't, and I don't have time for it. I didn't have the time to just willy-nilly waste, but I don't shrink away from a debate. I don't. I'm really good at it. And, you know, I'm not going to get anything at it, not any money or anything like that. And certainly not trying to convert anybody or any being. Never been into doing that either. It achieves a goal on several fronts, and those fronts are things that people don't realize. I was talking about this in live stream last night, and a bunch of people wanted me to talk about it. And I don't care about religions. And everybody talks about another YouTuber. You know, he talks about the Bible all the time, and then 99.9% of the time he's going after it, which is understandable, and people have asked me to criticize his translations, and I looked at the key ones that people were talking about, and his translations are accurate. But, you know, I got nothing against him one way or another. My whole point, I tell people, is, you know, if you point out how much you think something is bogus, life is way too short to focus in on something that you adamantly and vehemently and fundamentally know is just absolute bogus. It's just, why do that? There actually is a religion that goes after religions, and that's all it does. It doesn't offer, you know, atheism is that, by the way. Atheism has nothing to do about God one way or the other, and apparently people don't know this. It's blatantly obvious. You can look this up. It's called metaphysical atheism. It has nothing to do about, we're not talking about God one way or the other here, okay? Absolutely not. It's called metaphysical atheism. It points out all the craziness of other religions, but it itself is a religion. Please, whatever you do, don't ever call me an atheist. It doesn't offer a path or any transcendence. I mean, fundamentally, it's just based in morality, but the most immoral people I've ever encountered have either been religious or they've been atheistic. So I've got no connection to that either. I stay away from religions, and I absolutely don't care what other people believe. People say, what do you believe? You believe in this, you believe in that? And I always laugh when I hear the word belief. Well, kind of always. Belief systems are extremely superficial. Definitionally, they're profane and low and base. And this doesn't mean, and of course, I've spoken endlessly about the fact that people think they are the things that they believe. It's like, well, if you don't believe what I believe, then I believe I don't like you, because what I believe is who I am. And when you went after my beliefs, even though they're crazy and ridiculous and absurd, you know, you went after me, and, you know, now I'm going to get you. And, you know, this is at the very core of all religions, absolutely all of them. They are collectively belief systems, and this is, beliefs are playthings of children. I am an expert on earliest so-called Buddhism, but that term didn't exist until the 16th century. If I'm anything, I'm just a metaphysician. Even saying Neoplatonic Platonist is completely improper. What it is metaphysical monism. I know you probably don't know what that is, but it's no different than Advaita Vedanta. This whole idea, and by the way, everything we got about the Western, anyway, ideas of Buddhism, which is a term that didn't even exist until the 16th century, and then I'll talk about Christianity here in just a second, is that English and German people in the 18th and the early 19th century, what they did is that when Westerners, European and Westerners in general, wanted to know about this Eastern beliefs, Germans and English traveled to Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, and they met the yellow-robed guys. Yeah, we call them Theravadins, but they used to be called Sarvastivadins, which is basically a materialist. It's basically a religion of morality and soul-denying nihilism, which is completely unoriginal. they brought all this garbage back, and the whole pollution, and it is pollution, pollution of the Western mind about the very principles of so-called Buddhism is absolutely upside down and backwards. As Dr. Anandakirti Kumaraswamy accurately said, Buddhism is most famous today for everything it originally never taught. This whole idea of breath is not found in there. You know, literal focusing in on your breath, that's absolute heresy. It's not my opinion, that's a fact. It's also completely antithetical to logic and reason. This idea of no soul without a soul or a transcendent subject, liberation and immortality is completely impossible, and yet that's what these Germans and English people brought back when they traveled to India and Burma and Sri Lanka. That's what they brought back, morality-based nonsense, the idea of experiences, you know, the sphere of the existential, which is what it is. There's no such thing as transcendence or wisdom based upon experiences. Experiences is within the sphere of the corpus of the psychophysical, which is the complete opposite of the sphere of transcendence, which is outside that existential. If it's not logical, rational, we can't engage in reductio ad absurdum fallacies. All religions are belief systems and nonsense that people are taught to identify with and as. And it's the source of 99% of the world's strife and conflict. I mean, that's just absolutely undeniable. Also, too, I've pointed out two big things that nobody's ever countered on my behalf by saying, and they're undeniable, is that religions, every one of them, to greater or lesser degrees, spread themselves like a virus because they themselves, the thing itself is not fulfilling. It's not fulfilling, which is a marker. It's kind of like, by their deeds shall ye know them. You know, when it spreads itself like a cancer, because it itself is in no way fulfilling. You know, it's kind of like the Borg. You will be assimilated. You know, the Borg are not fulfilled in being a collective, right? Which, of course, the Borg don't exist. They have to spread themselves and, you know, make themselves greater and greater and greater. And it's like, what else in nature is like this? Viruses, parasites, things that are foul and definitionally demonic. And religions spread themselves exactly like that. People traveling in pairs, knocking on your door, wanting to spread the good word. It's like, you know, if this were fulfilling, you'd be sitting at home blissed out, completely oblivious to whether the world was on fire, regardless of what, you know, it would be fulfilling of its own accord, but it's not. You know, you got to get together and plot and scheme to spread it like a virus or a parasite. So this is a great marker, and this is the marker not of metaphysics or philosophy, which is metaphysics, philosophia, the love of wisdom, which is no different than saying the love of transcendence. So this is beliefs versus gnosis, okay? And I don't confuse empirical knowledge, i.e. episteme, with wisdom or gnosis. Completely two totally different systems. One is evil and ignorance, and the other one is about transcendence and fulfillment. Also, too, this is completely undeniable by anybody, no matter what your religious acumen or belief systems are, is that ultimate truth can never, ever have a beginning in place, time, or person. If it has a beginning in time, or place, or person, then it can't be true, and it can't be a universal truth, and if it's not a universal truth, it's not a fundamental truth. It cannot be, by definition. You can't argue anything contrary to what I just said. It's utterly 100% impossible. This idea that the Bible is true because it's said is true, I mean, this is not only laughable, absurd, reductio ad absurdum, but it is heretical circular logic. And by circular logic, I of course mean illogic. Humans use these texts as, you know, as a club rather than a tool for unification. Religions, of course, are used as control devices by groups and entities, and also, too, especially by the government. Metaphysics are meant to free people. Religions are meant to control people, and that, I'm afraid, is just an absolute fact. You know, it's about being powerless and obedient and wanting to be rescued. Corrupt governments love religions because it actually puts people in this little dark hole of powerlessness, obedience, and waiting to be rescued. They're disempowering. It's like, well, it's okay if the government is oppressing me, you know. Someday in the future I will get my reward in heaven. then all of this misery will be over. I mean, it is literally disempowering, and that's the reason why governments love religions. They absolutely love it. By the way, I don't know if you know the King James Version of the Bible is not the testament of either of God or of Jesus. It is literally the King James Version of the Bible. King James gave translation rules to the translators of same, like the word ecclesia. It's translated, I think, 133 occurrences in the Bible as church. Well, ecclesia doesn't mean church, it means assembly. Yeah, you could say, you know, the church and its assembly of people, but that's not what ecclesia means. There's so many hundreds of examples of things where intentionally, and very, very important things, intentionally mistranslated to give empowerment to King James' idealism of his own separate church entity and his desire for power behind it. Religions are the opposite of empowering. They're literally a type of enslavement that just... Pope Leo X in 1521 called Christ a fable. I don't know if you know this or not. Some of the popes in the past that were really, really keen knowers of not just the Bible, but of the history of the Bible, that they know the endless loopholes. I mean, the church itself is all about power grabs. It is about keeping people powerless and keeping people underneath the thumb of the church. Some of these people, like the other guy who I agree with his translations on, they waste their lives pointing out the nonsense of this text. And there is so many nonsense, so an enormous mountain, higher than Mount Meru, of nonsense. You know, it's just, how many can you point out? It's just completely ridiculous. It's you just really, really, really have to cut out half your brain and turn the rest of it off to even believe in this nonsense. But even if you believed in it, beliefs are so superficial and so profane relative to the liberation of true wisdom, which is transcendental by definition. Religions enslave, and metaphysics are about transcendence. The absolute is not sentient being. All these religions fundamentally are the same in that they're based around the idea that that which is most simple is a complex, i.e. a sentient being, i.e. a transcendent, super powerful being that you should be afraid of and live in fear of, or the Bible's idea that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. I mean, from the perspective of anybody with a microgram of wisdom, that is not only so heretical, it's so laughable and so nonsensical. I mean, the entire text itself has to be completely dismissed just to paste upon, you know, a handful of passages like that itself within the Bible. How the Gospels were created. Constantine instructed Eusebius to organize a compilation of uniform collections of writings developed. This was the first Nicene order, by the way. He said to them, "Search ye these books, whatever is good in them, that retain, but whatever is evil, that cast away." There will be the collection called the Books of Books, and this shall be the doctrine of my people, which I shall recommend unto all nations, such that there will be no more conflict for sake of religions. Well, it's just the opposite happened, of course. This is from the God's Book of Esdras, by the way, the Second Council of Nicaea. Christianity didn't exist until the First Nicene Order. Then the Second Nicene Order, which was in 786, denounced the first one, which created Christianity whole cloth. First Nicene Order created Christianity, didn't exist before then. The Second Council pointed out that the First Council was a synod, or a collection of fools and madmen, and sought to annul these decisions passed by the First Council, these decisions passed by men with troubled brains. So the Second Nicene Council said that the First Nicene Council were a pack of crazy madmen. But the First Nicene Council was the one that created Christianity. All the things you thought are original to Christianity, like the Trinity is super ancient. I could give a 4-hour lecture on the origins and meaning of the Trinity, which is far antecedent to Christianity. Everything of Christianity is taken or stolen from somewhere else. All Christian mystics, by the way, this is not my opinion, this is a fact, all Christian mystics were Neoplatonists. You know, you thought that, you know, their main book there was the Bible, which is just a hodgepodge of stories and blathering, irrelevant, self-contradictory gibberish. They didn't use that as source material. The Christian mystics used the Enneads of Plotinus and Proclus and Iamblichus and Aristotle and Plato. They were Neoplatonists. Specifically, they were Pythagorean monists, to be specific. Let's get on to some other interesting ones here. The church claimed that the resurrection... I don't know if you've ever heard of this. It's called the oldest Bible in the world. It's called the Sinai Bible. Yeah, have you ever compared the modern Bibles, any modern Bible, with the Sinai Bible? Which, by the way, was purchased by the Church of England, wasn't it, for like X number of thousands of pounds? It was purchased from the Soviet Union. I don't have that directly in front of me, but it was purchased by them. I can't remember. It was purchased by some English group from the Soviet Union. The Church claims that the resurrection is the fundamental argument for the Christian belief. Catholic Encyclopedia. Obviously, this is the case, undeniable. Yet no supernatural appearance of a resurrected Jesus is recorded in any of the earliest Gospels of Mark available. A resurrection and ascension of Jesus is a sine qua non, without which there is nothing. In other words, without resurrection, Christianity cannot exist. It is completely obliviated. But it doesn't exist in the oldest Bible. It doesn't. And of course, some Christian will probably say, well, that Bible was planted by Satan to plant doubts in the minds of disbelievers. I know what a Christian would say. Confirm these words attributed to Paul. If Christ has not been raised, your faith is in vain. 1 Corinthians 5:17. The resurrection verse in today's Gospel of Mark are universally acknowledged as forgeries, and the church agrees, saying the conclusions of Mark is admittedly not genuine. Almost the entire section is a latter compilation. I could cite you the Volume 2, 1880, Catholic Encyclopedia, yada. Under the evidence of its spuriousness, Catholic Encyclopedia, yada yada, you don't need that reference. The church accepted the forgery into its dogma and made it the basis of Christianity. Thus, the Gospel of Mark and the Sinai Bible carries the first story of Jesus Christ in recorded history, one completely different from that found in the King James Version and Modern Bible. It starts with Jesus at about the age of 30, Mark 1:9, and doesn't know of Mary, doesn't know of a virgin birth, it doesn't know of the atrocities committed by King Herod. Words describing Jesus as the Son of God do not appear in the opening narrative as they do in today's editions of Mark 1:1. And the modern day family tree tracing messianic bloodline back to King David is non-existent in all the ancient Bibles and are now called messianic prophecies. The Sinai Bible carries conflicting versions of events surrounding the raising of Lazarus. On every important thing that is the fundamental cornerstone of Christianity, according to the ancient Bibles and the Sinai Bible, are not found therein. No supernatural appearance of resurrection recorded in ancient Gospels of Mark. But a description of over 500 words, in addition, appear in modern Bibles, which are Mark 16, 9 through 20. This is also, too, goes on to the Great Insertion and the Great Omission. Modern-day versions of the Gospel of Luke have a staggering 10,000 more words than the same Gospel in the Sinai Bible. 6 of those words say of Jesus, and was carried up to heaven, but this does not appear in the oldest Gospels of Mark. Hibbert Journal, London. Ancient versions do not verify modern-day accounts of an ascension of Jesus. This falsification clearly indicates an intention to deceive. The early popes and experts in Bible history knew this stuff, but they didn't talk about it because that would be to countermand the power and the control and the might of the Christian and Catholic Church. The insertion of these forgeries into the gospel bewilders modern Christian analysts, and of them the church said the characters of these passages make it dangerous to draw inferences. Just as remarkable, the old Gospels of Luke omit all verses from 6:45 to 8:26, known in the priesthood circles as the Great Omissions, a total of 1,547 words. Today's versions, that hole has been plugged up with passages plagiarized from other Gospels. Dr. Tischendorf, Paragraphs, New Version. All of this stuff, like resurrection and Virgin Mary, all of this stuff is a fabrication. Everything, the resurrection is a fabrication. It's not mentioned in the ancient Bibles. It's not mentioned. Go look up. And I found many sources where you can download free copies of the Sinai Bible. All this stuff that is the basis of Christianity is not found in the original. It doesn't exist there unless you think like, the devil took it out on purpose to sow. Somebody would probably say that. I don't touch religions. I don't care about them. And like another YouTuber, and I got nothing against the guy, but he wastes all his time, attacking this ridiculous text of nonsense and blathering, self-contradictory trash. It's just a pile of trash. There's some good nuggets in there, of course. Obviously so, about leading a good life, but that's morality. That's not wisdom. That's not transcendence. He wastes all this time, and there are many people that do that. They waste their whole lives focusing in on something that they themselves know and keep yelling about it being a pile of belief-based garbage and nonsense and a pile of contrived rubbish put together by... What sort of conclusions can you draw from the Second Nicene Order attacking the First Nicene Order, which created Christianity whole cloth, as saying that they're all crazies? These people created Christianity in the First Nicene Order. The Second Nicene Order were not a bunch of atheists or non-Christians. The Second Nicene Order, the Second Nicene Order were the old ancient founding fathers of Christianity. They said the first folks were crazy. How do you reconcile that? You go talk to your priest about that. He's not going to have an answer. Of course not. He says, excuse me, sir, what about the Sinai Bible? It doesn't mention anything about... Virgin Mary, doesn't mention anything about resurrection and the raising of life. All these miracles and nonsense, it's not found in the ancient Bibles or the oldest existing Bible, the Sinai Bible. It doesn't exist there. I don't want anybody to think I'm going after Christianity. I go against all of these religions because they are the opposite of metaphysics. They are against transcendence. They're about enslaving minds, belief systems, control, ignorance, powerlessness, obedience, waiting to be rescued. For like the past 1,500 years, everybody thought, this is the end times. He's going to return any day now. Any day now. Any day now he'll be back. I know I'm laughing, but... reductio ad absurdum. You can't believe in this rubbish. It's absolute rubbish that doesn't hold water, and you can't engage in circular arguments like, well, it's true because it says it's true. Well, that's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's based in fear and control. God is angry at man because he didn't give him enough wisdom to not to follow the law. It's ridiculous. The absolute is not sentient being. The most fulfilled being in the entire universe, not that he, she, it exists, would be God. This idea that he creates so he's got somebody to wag his finger at and throw into hell. I'm going to throw him out there. I'm not going to give him enough wisdom to understand what to do and what not to do. See if they really love me. It's like, you're the embodiment, doesn't exist of course. You're the embodiment of fulfillment and perfection. You would have need of not. This idea that the absolute creates and it is a sentient being. Of course, the absolute does create, but it is not a sentient being. That's the inverse fallacy of all creationism. It sees, well, being below means there's being above. As above, so below. Therefore, I'm going to stupidly conclude that as below, therefore, too, must be mirrored above. So sentience and being down here must mean it must be up there. No, it doesn't work that way. Somebody with a sharp mind, like a Platonist or a Pythagorean or a Neoplatonist, Iamblichus, Proclus, Syrianus, Damasius, on and on and on. They didn't make such specious, ignorant, harebrained, nonsensical, brain-dead conclusions as that. I don't ever want to discuss religions. I don't care what anybody believes. I've never tried to convert anybody to anything. But I am not going to be, browbeat or whatever you're going to hell. You're going to go to heck, He loves you. Another thing that kind of amazes me, the one doesn't posit the other. I was talking about last video, demon. Well, they say, well, you can't admit the demons and not admit the God. Those are two completely unconnected entities. He's like, well, demons exist. That must mean that you're positing God. Like, no, it doesn't mean that at all. A demon is just a different class of being, whether they be embodied or disembodied. Being here doesn't posit God. The absolute is God. Neither does a demon posit same either. So, I have a strong mind, and I can't be swayed by this type of, this huckstery. It's a type of hucksterism. It's a belief system which is profane and superficial, and it's heretical against wisdom and the quest for transcendence. Like, I don't have to believe, I don't have to do anything, I just need to believe. You say, what is this stuff I'm reading in this book here? It doesn't make any sense. Well, you don't have to understand it, you just need to believe it. Is that all it takes? That's right. Well, that's pretty awesome. I wished it did work that way. Man, things would be a whole lot easier. You wouldn't have to quest for anything. You didn't have to understand anything or figure anything out. You wouldn't have to apply yourself. You just got to believe. Devotion and belief, that's all it takes. Submission, too. Don't forget. Submission, devotion, and belief. That's it. Man, that's pretty easy. Some people say, no, that's hard. It's like if you think devotion and belief and submission are hard, then you have no idea what the path of wisdom is. I mean, you got no clue whatsoever. That's about as easy as it gets. It's like falling backwards into a tub of water at level of difficulty. It's not hard at all. All you have to do is believe, son. Really. Believe in nonsense? I got to turn my brain off. It helps if you turn your brain off. Because if you got your brain working, then that's the playground of Satan. Because you'll soon realize this stuff is just absolute wackadoodle nonsense. So that's why you got to turn your brain off, because Satan wants you to think about how crazy this is. But if you turn your brain off and just believe in it, you're okay. It's crazy! That level of crazy. Let me do that again. It's like a special level of crazy. It's this level of crazy. It helps if you turn your brain off and try not to think about how nutty and nonsensical this stuff is. Religions are control devices. I got nothing to do with them. I don't care what anybody believes. It's none of my business. Yeah. It's just not. But I don't have any respect for any religion. I just don't. I have respect for people. You are not what you believe. How many times do I have to say that? If you don't get that, then you don't get anything. You are not that thing that you believe in. But I mean, I could spend 100 times more time than this going after the Buddhists, this idea of breath meditation and no-soul nihilism and experiences. I mean, all of that is religious garbage. It's completely not found within the original text. Completely absent. Doesn't teach that at all. Doesn't teach that anywhere. Really good at debating that stuff. Man, there's nothing finer than you seeing me come into conflict with a so-called Buddhist and we have a discussion about facts, logic, and doctrine. You better put your money on me because I'm going to win every time. And it's not about winning. It's like if you're not set your soul and yourself within the facts, then it's sitting outside of the facts and logic. And that's not a place anybody wants to be. Well, some people do, but that's very unfortunate. I hope you have a lovely week. It has been a really, really horrible week for me. It's just unending misery, too much work. Harder I work, the more bills I have. But that's life, right? No metaphysics teaches the end of physical suffering either, by the way. None of them do. Not in any translation. That's all people join religions for. I want there to be less suffering. Yeah, well, you might find some of that in religion, but it doesn't exist in metaphysics. Thank you.